Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I thought it would be fun to kind of open up a little bit more and talk about a topic that I personally deal with all the time. And since we are all on our phones a little bit more during this time right now, that it is super important and relevant to share some information about comparing yourselves, especially I'm going to be talking specifically in comparing yourselves to other creatives, to other artists, in my case to other photographers or anything like that. And this can go for anyone really. It doesn't even have to go just to creatives, but I'm going to be specifically talking about that. So anyways, that's what I'm going to be talking about today, and let's get right into the video. Okay, so first off, I want to talk about something called imposter syndrome, and I think that imposter syndrome is really relevant to this topic. Okay, so when I heard about this imposter syndrome for the first time, I really related to it, and I think it could be helpful in this situation too, especially when you're creative. Putting your work out there, putting yourself out there is really, really hard. So I'm actually going to read it. So imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which one doubts one's accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So basically, in plain terms, would be you just don't feel like you're good enough. You don't feel like, let's put it into a broader category here, like celebrities. If you're a new up-and-coming actress, you might feel as though you're an imposter. Big holiday, so if you were to go to a big holiday party as a new and upcoming actress, you might feel as though you are an imposter because you are not, a award-winning actress with all these other people. So that is what imposter syndrome is. And so if you ever are feeling like you're comparing yourself to someone else or something like that, you might struggle with this. It's definitely something that I struggle with, and when I look at really successful photographers that I admire and stuff, sometimes it makes me feel like I am not a real photographer or a real artist or creative or whatever it is. So now I'm going to get into the 6 ways that I deal with comparing myself to other creatives, photographers, or artists. So number 1 is to recognize the difference between, admiring someone or comparing yourself to someone, looking up to someone as an idol, and obsessing or making yourself feel bad in comparison to that person. Once you can figure out the difference between that, you can then move on to the next step. So what I mean by this is this someone you just look up to as an idol, or you really like, for me as a photographer, I really like other photographers' work. One second, let me let the dogs out. So is this someone that you just look up to and admire and idolize and really like their work, or, draw inspiration from their work? Or is this someone that you compare yourself to with vanity metrics like likes or followers, or you feel bad when you look at their image or their feed or whatever it is, their profile, feel bad about yourself and feel like you're not good enough? Recognize the difference between that. So for me, there's photographers that I follow that I really like their images and really idolize them, and I watch their IGTVs and watch their YouTube channels to learn from them. And then there's other photographers that I compare myself to, and this can really happen for me with local photographers because I see that they have more followers or more likes, so they get better engagement or whatever it is, and that makes me feel bad, makes me feel like an imposter even sometimes. So number 1 is to recognize that and try to think of specific examples that you can put into those categories. Number 2 is to acknowledge that you cannot compare yourself to anyone, because everyone's art, especially if we're talking about creatives, and everyone is different from each other. For me, it really helps to remember that our circumstances are completely different. So an example of this is a local photographer in my area has been kind of doing photography professionally. I want to say, I don't know what the best word is to use it for, but running a business. Not that they weren't a photographer before, or I wasn't a photographer before I was, just like as a business, about the same amount of time as me. They have roughly the same amount of followers. I have a little bit more just by a hair, but they get a lot of engagement on their photo, or yeah, on their images. They get tons of comments, tons of likes, and I don't get the same engagement. I get a good amount of engagement from my followers, but I wish that I got more comments on my Instagram. So they get a lot of comments, and I constantly am comparing myself to them, because the one thing that always makes me feel bad when I'm comparing myself to them is that they are not following a ton of people. They're barely following anyone. So all these people that are following them, you know, are more fan-like, if that makes sense. Where me, I put in like so much work to gain the audience that I do. Every single day I spend at least 15 to 30 minutes, and sometimes it's more, it's hours of time engaging with people, commenting, liking, following different people. I'm like actually physically building my audience, where it seems that this person just has an audience because their images are great. Well, going back to number 2, acknowledging that our circumstances are completely different. When I actually looked through their followers, a lot of their followers are just, you know, other creatives. And that's so great. Again, like obviously I'm jealous of the audience that they have and the engagement that their audience gives. But I don't need to feel bad, because my audience is a target audience that I custom built. So they could be jealous of that. So it doesn't really do anything to compare myself to that person and their vanity metrics, because our circumstances are just different. So there's an example, a personal example of number 2. Try to accept that your circumstances are different. So of course, you're gonna have different outcomes, and there's nothing to compare yourself on, because that is not beneficial. It's not gonna do anything for them, and it's not gonna do anything for you. Okay, number 3 is to reflect on why you feel the need to compare yourself to them. So what is it about that person, that creative, that artist, or that celebrity, even influencer? What is it about them that makes you compare yourself to them? So going back to my personal struggles with this, going off photographers, I'll feel like they have better equipment than me, they have more expensive equipment, they have a better audience, better vanity metrics. Reflect on why you feel that way, because sometimes you can actually learn from them. If you feel this way because their images are like so much better than yours, or whatever it is, you know, in a photographer's standpoint, then you can learn from them, take inspiration from them, but figure out why you're feeling this way. That can actually help you remove those feelings by figuring out why you feel that way in the first place. So if it's if it's a body image thing, like if we're talking about influencers and out of the creative world, you can actually understand it a little bit better and maybe unfollow them, or, you know, whatever you need to do, but that can help you on to your next step. So going from that, number 4 is to learn from them. So number 3 and 4 kind of go hand in hand. You know, figure out what it is about them that makes you, you know, compare yourself. And if you can, learn from them. So for me, I really like to look at photographers' images in portfolios, and sometimes I'll feel bad about myself because I know that they have more expensive equipment than me, or better images, or they have this sort of feeling or tones in their image that I really want to capture, but I'm just not there yet, and that can make me feel quite bad. But if I turn it around and say, oh, well, they are shooting in these circumstances and that's how they get those tones. Oh, well, maybe I should try shooting in those circumstances, or whatever it is. So try and learn from them as best as you can, especially in the creative world. It's really hard to be, you know, defensive about your work, and it's hard to put yourself out there. It's hard to put your work out there, especially if you feel a personal connection to it, which most artists and creatives do. But try to learn from them, and you know, try to make sure your ego's in check. We all can always keep learning. That's like my motto, is just try to learn as much as I can every single day, and it will make you a better creative. So try to learn from them, even though sometimes you envy them. Number 5 is probably my most important tip is remember that there's room for everyone in whatever field or whatever topic you are taking this video in. For me, photography, it's really hard to compare myself to local photographers, whether they've been doing it longer than me, shorter than me, the same amount of time as me. But remember that there's room for everyone. There's room for the photographer that in my area that's been doing this for 10 years. There's room for me, and there's room for the person that's been doing it 1 month. There's room for all of us, and we can actually create a better team and a better system and a better community if we all remember that and work together. I know it's so hard to work with your competition, but if you try to look at it as not your competition and remember that there's room for everyone, I can't take all of the clients on in my area at once. That's just impossible. But if we work as a team, we all can benefit from it, and there's room for all of us. There's no reason to be competitive or comparing yourself. So when you remember that, it brings you down a little bit and it makes you feel a lot better too. So my last tip is to stop looking. Now, I know that this one seems a little bit like self-explanatory, but I had to put it in there. Stop looking. If you can constantly compare yourself to someone else's social media or their art or their portfolio or whatever it is, stop looking. Unfollow it if you need to. That helps me a lot. Is to just not think about it, not see it, out of sight, out of mind. So if you need to do that to help you, try it. It really helps me to do that. And I only follow other photographers or creatives that inspire me and I can learn from, not ones that make me feel bad about my work or where I'm at in my progress or in my journey. And if I follow someone and I feel like I'm starting to feel that way, then I just unfollow them. And if you feel like you can't unfollow them because of like a personal connection or something like that, or you feel bad unfollowing them, just send them a message and letting them know how you're feeling. And that's why. So if you feel uncomfortable unfollowing someone, maybe that will help. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to end this video by saying, remember that the vanity metrics, if we're talking in social media, the vanity metrics like likes, followers, engagement, stuff like that, is not always what it appears to be, and there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than that. So please don't compare yourself to that. If you are looking at vanity metrics in a business aspect, I know it can be so hard. I get literally so caught up in my vanity metrics, trying to make sure they're perfect and trying to make sure I'm always growing, and it can be really, really tough when you're dealing with the numbers all the time. So just remember that other people's vanity metrics do not matter. There's room for everyone. And if you have to focus on yours, try to put it into a positive spin. I know it's really hard, but just remember that those really don't mean anything. So what matters is the way that you feel about your work. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to give it a like and leave a comment down below on how you work with comparing yourself to others, what you do to stop doing that, or what you do to make yourself feel better. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.